Hello and welcome to Ward Talk, CTN's look at the political scene in Ann Arbor. I'm your host, Bonnie Gabowitz. We'll be discussing issues and solutions with the City Council members from our 5 wards on the 3rd Wednesday of each month. Joining us is Jack Eaton from Ward 4. Welcome, Jack.
Hi, Bonnie. It's a pleasure to be back again. I guess it's been a while.
Yes, it has, but I just want to ask you, you've been here for quite a few years, so when did you actually start being on the committee?
So I began serving on City Council in November of 2013, and so I've been here 6 years.
So is this your 3rd term?
Yes. My first 2 terms were 2-year terms. Mm-hmm. We've converted to 4-year terms. So the term I'm serving now is actually a transition term, which is just 3 years long. And by the end of this term, I will have served 7 years.
And you're still cooking. That's
yes.
Wonderful.
You know, you come to council with a certain number of issues that you really want to work on. I can tell you that those have not all been resolved. But you become fascinated by all of the other things that come before council. So it's very important.
Right, and speaking of council, this past year, we have new people on working with you on the commission, the council, and we've been having new people on our show as well. So what's it like for you to be working with some new blood? And
well, I really enjoy the 4 new council members. They've brought new issues and new energy to the council. There's a real sense of collaboration. I especially want to give a shout out to my Ward 4 colleague who was elected in November of last year. She's bright, she's hardworking, she shares my dedication to representing our ward residents, and it's just a real pleasure to serve with her. So.
And that is, don't keep me guessing.
Yeah, I should face this camera and say, my colleague, Elizabeth Nelson. We collaborate really well. We don't always agree, but it's a pleasure to work with somebody who is a deep thinker and is smart and wants to work with others. And so it's just been a real pleasure. And then additionally, she has a great sense of humor, so she's fun to work with. You know, I've really enjoyed this year working with her and the other new council members.
Yeah, and so we of course have a lot of topics to cover because so many of these are long-standing issues that sometimes the wheels turn slowly, but there are some new developments. So let's start with the Delman plume because that had been in the news just recently. What's the change, or where are we?
Like so many of the issues that come before council, there's not a quick resolution to these issues. And Delman plume, this has been a recognized problem for 30 years now. About 3 years ago, this city council voted to seek intervenor status in the litigation between the state and the polluter, and that had to go all the way through the courts. The polluter didn't want our involvement. Eventually, the Supreme Court upheld our involvement in this case, and so the state has also passed new lower levels of permissible dioxin,
which is actually good. Which is actually improvement.
This is superb, yes.
And let's just identify the polluter, because isn't this company now not alive and well? I mean, was it sold to some other entity?
So originally it was the Gelman Corporation, which has not ceased to exist, but it was purchased by Paul Instruments, which is a German corporation. And then Paul sold this operation off to a corporation called Danaher, which just ironically, one of the things they do is they filter water, filter dioxin out of water. That's one of the technologies that they have. But as a corporate entity, Gelman still exists. It's just been purchased by others. And so although Danaher is the main corporation, and they're the ones that have the money to address this, should it be addressed. It still is basically their subsidiary, Gelman.
So what is the news for this month in terms of what's happening?
Okay. So once we became an intervener in the state's litigation, and because of the new lower standards for how much dioxin can be in the water, we're engaged in negotiations to revise the consent judgment that governs the cleanup and the containment of the plume. And because we're at the table, we actually have a voice in the resulting product of those negotiations, which is really important. On the other hand, some of us, including me, believe that we would be better served if we brought in the U.S. EPA. And
So this is the federal level?
yes, because the federal environmental protections are stronger. The federal government is more muscular. You know, Danaher is a multinational, very big, wealthy corporation that can litigate every little point ad nauseum. And if you have the muscle of the federal government behind you, I think it would lead to a better outcome. Not everybody agrees with me, but that's my position.
And is your opinion in the minority or majority of the council?
We don't know yet.
You don't know? Okay.
So what will happen is a proposed revised consent judgment will come to council, and we will vote whether to sign on to that or seek a different avenue, such as EPA. Prior to us voting on it, the draft proposal will be circulated in the public. The public will have plenty of time to comment on whether they support it or oppose it or what position they want us to take. And then, based on what we hear from our voters, we'll decide what direction to move forward. An additional wrinkle is that we're cooperating with the county board and Scioto Township. So all three bodies are interveners in the litigation, and so periodically we have joint sessions, which is kind of unprecedented. But that's the enormity of this issue is that it takes more than just one of the governmental units to speak on it.
And it's affecting more than one community, for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, right. So I just want to ask you, there seems to be concern about the drinking water in schools, and they're watching the levels of certain things that shouldn't be in the water. Is that in any way connected to the plume, or is that a separate issue with the PFAS?
That's really a separate issue. Well, there's a couple of issues, but one of our primary issues with the Gelman plume is should it migrate north to our drinking water intake at Barton Pond, it would be a calamity. It would just be, we would have to stop taking water out of Barton Pond and find a different source. Independent of that, in the Huron River, we do have PFAS and some other chemicals that we're monitoring. We just have superb staff that addresses the quality of our drinking water. And so
you'd say they're on top of it. They're monitoring it, and they're...
Yes. And it takes a lot of effort. I mean, as these chemicals emerge, it's important that we have this very talented staff on hand to lose sleep on our behalf, to always be out ahead of the emerging issue and make sure that our drinking water is safe.
Great, okay. And we've talked on our show several times about the master plan. And I know this is a big project that is now being looked into and revised and improved. So where are we at the master plan?
Yep.
And I know it's a long road, but
Yes.
it's very complicated.
Like so many of our issues, it's a long road, and so often the controversial issues that come to council are over a new development and a developer seeking to rezone a piece of property so that he can build more than might be allowable under the current zoning. And the master plan is an attempt to describe what we want our community to be 10 years, 20 years down the road. And there are portions of our master plan that haven't been looked at for quite some time.
And would you say because they haven't been addressed and changed some types of development have come in because legally they were allowed to.
It's more often the opposite, where the master plan says, well, this property is suitable for single-family homes, but the developer wants to build, you know, a dense apartment complex or condominium complex. And so when they seek the rezoning of that property to make that possible, the master plan provides for something else. But on the other hand, it can go the other way too. The Northeast plan called for a fair amount of density that now that it's being developed, our infrastructure is struggling to handle. So if you drive out Pontiac Trail, it's just a congested mess. You know, Plymouth Road or Washtenaw. That whole area of the city has really experienced a lot of growth over the decades since the Northeast Plan was devised. And so when the Nixon Farm proposal came to us, we were plopping down, you know, a small community on the edge of our town on top of all of the other congestion problems we already had, and we really hadn't sufficiently planned how we would handle all those new residents. And so it goes both ways.
Right. So in the minute we have left before the break, in terms of the master plan, you're looking to kind of accommodate what kind of community we want in the next several decades.
Yes.
That could accommodate different types of living situations.
And so it's really
with infrastructure that can support it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So our planning has to take into consideration the infrastructure that would be necessary for additional growth. All of our problems are problems of success. I mean, we have a hot economy. Everybody wants to move here. Everybody wants to build here. And so we have to be able to balance how we accomplish that. If you're going to add residents, you have to add capacity for on the roads, you know, sewers, all of the infrastructure. And so the process is to actually hear from our residents and have them tell us what they see as our long-term vision.
And so do you hear from your constituents?
On a regular basis. Yes, on a regular basis.
And Arborites are quite vocal,
Yes.
thank goodness.
Well, we're very fortunate to be well-educated, deeply involved community, and so it's a pleasure to serve people who are aware of what's going on and have thoughtful input.
Great, and we'll continue some more topics. Okay. We want to hear from you, so please email questions to ctn@a2gov.org or tweet us at #CTNinArbor. We're going to take a break now, and we'll be coming back with more from Ward 4 and Jack Eaton. Hi, I'm Bonnie Gabowitz for Ward Talk. I'm speaking with Jack Eaton from Ward 4. And Jack, you mentioned a few important topics, but let's go on to some more. First of all, there's now some talk about short-term rentals. And Ann Arbor is a very wonderful place to visit. And of course, we have a lot of activities, especially with the university and the football games. And we have a lot of short-term rentals. Has it become a problem? Is that why the council is now looking at some ways of addressing this?
So residents have brought various different concerns to us about short-term rentals. And this is one of those issues that demonstrate that nothing in government goes quickly. You know, I think that the people who brought this issue to our attention expected this to be resolved by now. Back in March, we asked staff to take a look at the issue, make recommendations as to possible ways to address the issues that have been raised.
Right.
But
And what was the precipitating events that caused them to bring this to your attention?
well, they're basically twofold. On the one hand, there's the nuisance complaint. And so if someone purchases the neighboring house and rents it out full-time as a short-term rental, you get a rotation of people through that house, and some of them are going to cause a nuisance. And so, for example, in one neighborhood, there was a house that was rented out to high school kids for their prom party or homecoming party, something like that. And it got kind of out of hand, and so there was considerable concern about that. People who come to town for football games sometimes will get loud and rowdy. So that's one aspect of it, is the nuisance. The other aspect is that when you buy a house and use it for short-term rentals, it takes it out of the housing market, which in Ann Arbor is already very competitive. And so reducing the number of houses available for sale or for rent long-term,
Do you have any figures
it makes
on
everything
that?
more expensive.
Yeah,
Okay.
do you have any figures on that as to the increase in houses that have been turned over into the short-term rentals that are no longer on the market?
So the initial investigation showed that on any given day there can be as many as 1,400 houses in town available for short-term rent.
Wow, that's a lot.
But when you look at how many of those are available all the time, it's probably about a third of that. But you
But
have
that's
to,
still a lot.
it's still a lot in a
Yeah.
town that's so expensive already and so competitive in rental and purchase. And it's a trend line as well. You know, 5 years ago it was 0, and now it's 1,400. So you can see the direction it's moving. And you know, I've sat down with business owners. This is their business. They buy up properties and they rent them out, and they see it as a growing industry. A lot of people come to Ann Arbor, not just for football games or that sort of thing, but because they know somebody that's in our hospital, you know, the University of Michigan Hospital, for a long term, and so they just need a place to stay that's less expensive than a hotel, you know, or something like that. So there are two basic models for short-term rentals. The one is somebody buys a property and they make it available year-round. The other is, like in my neighborhood, somebody might just vacate their home for a weekend and rent it out to somebody who's coming into town for a football game. And so maybe 7 weekends a year they rent it out, and they make enough money to afford our taxes or to afford something. And because housing is so expensive in this town, I'm very sympathetic to the idea that a homeowner might want to make that kind of use of their own home. So there's a whole range of ways people offer a home as a short-term rental.
So what is the council now looking at? What are they trying to determine?
We have excellent staff, and our staff has gone out and looked at other communities who have regulated short-term rentals. And they're going to present us with 3 or 4 options just to get a sense of what direction we want to go. And so until they really advise us on the potential avenues that we could take, we're just looking to see what's possible, you know. And
But
that report will come to
right,
us in
but
January.
do you foresee in the future there will be some kind of restrictions or guidelines that will make things more uniform.
Oh, absolutely. I think at a minimum we need to make sure that short-term rentals are registered, just like any rental property in town. You know, if you rent a house to students, you have to register and you have to have the house inspected for safety purposes and building code compliance. So making sure that they're at least registered and that they know the requirements that are placed on all rentals in town is an essential for me.
Is there an issue as to them paying additional taxes since they're getting income? Is there anything in place where they have to pay taxes on this income?
Currently, I don't believe that we apply tax law.
Yeah.
But if you were to run your house as a traditional bed and breakfast, that portion of your house that you use commercially first would be ineligible for the primary residence exception to your property taxes. So you get taxed higher for that portion of your house. And you also get taxed some business taxes for the property. So there are tax burdens that we put on a traditional bed and breakfast that don't apply to even the full-time short-term rentals. And there has to be some regularity because those are the competing markets. You know,
Right.
Somebody who's been operating a traditional bed and breakfast should not be disadvantaged by this new method.
And I know you were very happy with our police chief, and we have mentioned it on the other show. If we could just spend a couple of minutes talking about how he's transforming things and what the public safety issues are.
And so when I ran for council, I ran as an advocate for improving our essential infrastructure and improving our basic services. And certainly public safety, both police and fire, come within that term, you know, basic services. And over the years, we've really reduced the portion of our general fund budget that we spend on public safety. You know, it's just a few percentage points, but that's millions of dollars. And we recently hired a new police chief, and we've tasked him with doing a broad assessment of our policing and making recommendations to us as to how we get back to community policing. So rather than just being a reactive police department that just answers the complaints, that we get out into the community and the officers mingle with the public and build relationships based on trust, so that not everything is a negative when you interact with police officers. And so we're pretty excited to have this chief. One of the fabulous things he does is that once a month he sits down with the 2 ward members from each ward, you know, in individual meetings, and just talks about the crime in their own ward and listens to our concerns about what's going on in our ward. And he's very responsive, and I think we're all really excited to have him on board.
Great.
Now, the other half of public safety is fire. And our fire department really doesn't respond to as many fires as in the distant past. You know, one of their more important tasks now is medical emergencies, where they respond to medical emergencies. And in this last year, we've identified a number of times when our response times were rather deficient, caused significant problems. And so I'm very interested in addressing that too.
Now, is that because we have less staff or less equipment and trucks, or what?
There are a variety of things that contribute. You know, part of it might be our dispatching system, because we have a combined dispatch system that's struggling to get qualified staff. Another part is because we don't staff every one of our fire stations as robustly as we used to, it places challenges. In one instance, there was a call where all of the staff from all of the departments were at one place receiving training. And so that added to the response time, because by the time they left the training session and drove all the way across town, it caused significant problems in that response. So we really have to learn from these problem instances and make sure that that doesn't arise again. And if we need to add staff, then we need to add the staff that can fill in when others are being trained or are unavailable.
So that should definitely improve. And in the minute we have left, I know you can't talk in detail about some other topics, but you did want to mention some of the other challenges that the city and the council are facing. So what's the list?
So this new council, we've taken an aggressive stance on addressing our affordable housing problems. And I'm really excited that we're moving forward, assessing all of the publicly owned properties and their potential for development into affordable housing. We've set a very ambitious climate action plan to get to carbon neutrality by 2030. You know, some of the smaller things is we need to address our planning on a new train station, which has gotten just prohibitively expensive, you know, over the development of a plan.
That kind of got waylaid, didn't it? It just
Well,
kind of got
we're waiting
stuck.
for the federal government to respond to our proposal. But, you know, currently it has a price tag of something like $170 million. So even just the local portion of that price tag would just be extraordinarily expensive. There's some planning going on to expand our airport. That's in my ward. I've always opposed the airport expansion, and so I'll want to address that soon. Ann Bannister from the First Ward and I are working on an ordinance to protect heritage trees in town so that in our rush to develop the whole town, we don't destroy our tree canopy. There are just so many things.
Right. So that means you have to come back, Jack.
I always welcome your invitation, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Great. And we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you so
Great.
much.
And remember to join us for a new episode every third Wednesday of the month. We want to hear from you, so please email us at ctn@a2gov.org. Attention, Ward Talk. You can also follow CTN and ask questions on Twitter at twitter.com/CTN in Arbor. We'll make sure to include your questions. For Ward Talk, I'm Bonnie Gabowitz. Until next month.